Welcome everybody back to the channel. My name is Nick and I hope you guys are doing well whenever you are checking out the latest video here on the NBG Nick YouTube channel. I am very excited to check this one out with you guys because not only is this a subject that I absolutely love talking about on my channel when it comes to TV, talking about one of my favorite creators of all time, Mr. Dick Wolf here. But in addition, this was actually a suggestion from a fan that was left in the comments of not one of my videos, believe it or not, but one of my buddy Mike's videos over on his channel, Mike Talks and Thoughts. A couple of months ago, when Mike posted a video where he did a tier list based on various Dan Schneider characters, a YouTube commenter by the name of Sean Chandler 99 suggested that he do something similar with either Shonda Rhimes characters, I believe, or Dick Wolf characters. And since Mike isn't really big on either one of those two TV creators, he tapped me. He said, "Do you want to do a Dick Wolf character tier list?" And I was more than happy to oblige because, as I said, I absolutely love this guy and all of his shows, many of his characters as well. And I thought that was a really cool idea. So Mike and Mr. Sean Chandler, this one's for you guys, the Dick Wolf character tier list here. Of course, we have the world famous 7 tiers on my channel, ranging from God tier to the infamous bottom of the barrel. Believe me, as much as I love all of these characters, there are definitely going to be some that use up that bottom tier today. And obviously, Dick Wolf is absolutely super proficient when it comes to just the amount of shows he's had and the amount of characters. So I obviously couldn't fit every single person in here. I think the total number is about 70 to 75, give or take. Try to focus mostly on shows that are on currently and the ones I watch the most. So primarily the Law and Order shows and the Chicago shows. We have a few from FBI as well here, but primarily those two main series there. And then, of course, all the characters that are the most notable, either my favorites or ones that are on currently in the more relevant seasons of the show there. So if I did leave some of your favorites out, be sure to comment those in the comments there and we can have a good discussion about all of his awesome characters here from the TV shows. As always, they are in alphabetical order, so let's not waste any more time. This video is going to be very long as it is, and let's jump right into it here. We're going to start off with Mr. Adam Ruzek there on the bottom left, and already you guys know I am a huge fan of Adam. We have to go a God tier with him. I mean, this guy is absolutely awesome. I love his relationship with Kim on the show. He's just a super stand-up guy. He can be a little hot-headed at times, a little passionate, as they say, but he's absolutely awesome in my opinion. The actor, Patrick John Fluger as well, fantastic actor on the show. Just really makes you believe everything that's going on with his scenes and everything that's going on with his character. Absolutely wonderful. Definitely got to go God tier with Adam there. Next up, we have Alvin here as well from Chicago PD. And man, if you know, you know, man, the way that they sent him off, absolutely heartbreaking, but absolutely beautifully executed as well. He was a really great mentor in the early seasons. He was also the comic relief at times, which is always appreciated. Really worked closely with Adam. They did a lot of undercover type cases early on, which was really fun to see. Had great chemistry with everybody. Definitely going to go A1 tier with Alvin there. Following him, we have Amanda Rollins from Law & Order SVU here. Now, Amanda's a little bit more split in the fandom. Some people really like her, and some people really dislike her. I think I like her more than most. I'm going to put her in the great tier. She definitely did grow on me quite a bit as the series went on. Definitely one of my favorite characters currently on the show. There definitely were some issues with some of her personal storylines. I've talked about in the past, not really a big fan of her relationship with Carisi at all, never really cared for that. But outside of, a few little minor things like that, overall pretty solid character. I'm going to go great tier for her. Next up, we have another character from Law & Order SVU here that came in around the same time as Amanda. We have Nick Amaro here. Now, Nick is definitely very, very split in the fan base. Some people think he was one of the best characters on the show after Elliot Stabler left, and he was the initial replacement for him. And some people absolutely can't stand that fact because they love Stabler so much. For me, I definitely was pretty cold on him originally, and then he kind of grew on me as time went on. But I personally never cared for any of his personal storylines. The stuff with his kid or with his ex-wife, I never cared for any of that, and they focused on that quite a bit with his character. You know, they didn't really give him too much development when it came to his relationship with the other SVU detectives, and they really hammered home the storyline with his ex and his kid, and I just never really bought into that. Wasn't really that entertaining to me. So because they never really developed his character outside of that, I think I can only put him in good tier. But I think he is better than most people give him credit to. I do like the way they sent him off at the end of season 16 or so, season 16, 17, somewhere around there. His last episode is a really good one. But like I said, overall, still just definitely some things that they could have improved his character on as well. Next up here, we have Antonio Dawson from Chicago PD. Antonio is a fan favorite for a very good reason. He is another one that's going in A1 tier. Absolutely love this guy as well. One of the very first episodes of the show, actually, I think the very first episode of Chicago PD, we see him absolutely go through a brutal case involving his son, and just all of the heartbreak that comes with it and all the hardship that him and his family go through. And there's a scene in particular that him and Hank have in the episode where he has the suspect in custody, and he is just absolutely ruthless on him because this man kidnapped his son, and he is having no mercy on him, man. They torture him, they beat him ruthlessly, and you see Antonio just come out with that fire inside of him, you know. That's one thing about Antonio's character that some people would criticize, is that when he got a little hot-headed and a little heated like that, he would do some questionable things, you know, that weren't actually in the eyes of the law. It could be considered a little immoral at times, but that's what made him his character so fun to watch, is you never know what he would do, and he was always trying to just do the best by his squad and by his family. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in A1 there. A lot of anti-hero type archetypes on Chicago PD, and that's what makes it such a great show. If you love that crime drama aspect or those anti-hero stories, that's definitely a show for you, and quite a few characters we'll talk about throughout this tier list definitely have those qualities to them. Following him, we have Dean Archer here from Chicago Med. Relatively new character, but I'm a big fan of Steve Weber, the actor that plays him, and really think that they have developed him quite nicely in the more recent seasons. I'm going to go with great tier here. Him and Ethan definitely work great together. He was a soldier and a medic in the Army for a long time, so there's storylines with him dealing with like PTSD and stuff like that are really explored very nicely. All in all, very solid character. I'm going to go great tier. Next up here, we have Arthur Branch from the original Law & Order, one of the very first characters that are introduced in the season there, of course, alongside people like Serena Sutherland and Jack McCoy, who we'll talk about a little later. I think Arthur was a pretty good character overall, but can't really put him any more than that. He wasn't really active in most of the cases. He was just there kind of to guide either Jack McCoy or Serena or Michael Cutter later in the series, just whoever he was kind of, overseeing these cases with. But he never really participated in them fully the way that you maybe want him to. So for that reason, I'm going to say good tier. Next up, Sergeant Ayanna Bell here from Law & Order Organized Crime, one of the newest shows in the Law & Order franchise, and definitely one of the newest characters on this list. that's going to be, I think, her downfall in this context, because we just don't really know that much about her so far. Organized Crime is still a relatively new show, and so it only has a couple seasons so far to really develop these characters and such. And Ayanna, I do enjoy her quite a bit with Stabler, of course. They work very nicely together, but there just isn't really a lot of development yet in comparison to most of the other people on this tier list. So for that, I'm going to put her in the good tier for now. Following her, next up, we have ADA Rafael Barba. Now, he is very controversial in the fandom because when he had his original run on the show between like seasons 14 and seasons 17, somewhere around there. SVU, obviously a massive show, and so many seasons, it's hard to remember sometimes where these seasons, or where these characters rather, popped up and where they left. But with ADA Barba, his original run on the show was excellent. Everyone loved him. He was definitely one of the fan favorites there, arguably the best ADA the show ever had, and we'll go through plenty of those as we go along this video as well. But when it comes to the recent sort of episodes and the recent seasons that have featured him, they have turned his character into a bit of a villain there. And a lot of people really dislike him now for that reason, because you're supposed to, right? You're supposed to root against him now. He is a criminal defense lawyer, so he's always representing the bad guys. And a lot of people do not like the turn that he had in the show, that he went from just such a stand-up guy who was always following the rules of the law and, it was always by the book. And now he is, defending people that you obviously don't root for on the series. So for that, he is kind of in between a little bit. I still really think that he's very, very solid compared to where most people, I think, would rank him. I'm going to go in the great tier because I love that original run, but I can see why someone would definitely be a little peeved by the way that they turned his character now into a bit of a bad guy. Following him, we have Chief Bowden here from Chicago Fire. This guy is absolutely amazing. I love him as well. I'm going to go A1 tier. Just a super stand-up guy, super positive as well. Always taking after his, squad, his unit. Always making sure that they're doing well because he's the boss after all. He definitely has a couple controversial moments himself. There are certain episodes where he as well can get a little hot-headed and he can go against his superiors in, the ranks and stuff. But overall, really, really stand-up guy. He can definitely be funny at times as well, bringing that comic relief to the show. So I got to go A1 tier overall. Next up here, this one is going to be a little controversial for my opinion, but next up we have Sylvie Brett as well from Chicago Fire. I've talked about in the past, I'm not really a big fan of her and Matt Casey's relationship much. I think that the show really, really gave them too much time, and there were just other characters on the show that I wish they focused on more personally, just because they are just not very interesting together as a couple. Sylvie definitely had a lot of sort of soap opera-esque love triangle or, who's who sort of storylines in the show. And that just got really kind of stale after a while. And they just didn't really do much to expand it out of just, the basic, just surface level, sort of storylines that you can get out of that. They just really, really tried to make her out to be just someone that wasn't fully ready to commit to anybody, and that was the whole reason why they'd have tension in the show. It just didn't really work for me or for most other people, and that was pretty much her whole defining characteristics for a couple seasons. So that was just really disappointing, because I think all in all, outside of that, she's a pretty entertaining character, but just as far as the way that the story was going, it just did not work for me at all. So for that, I'm kind of balance her out. I'm gonna say meh tier. Just kind of whatever, honestly, with most of the love triangles, and like I said, her relationship with Casey just didn't really do much for me, but she did have a couple decent moments, so I'm not gonna put her any lower than that, but overall just kind of a whatever type of character. Next up is Brian Cassidy here from SVU as well. For me, I'm going to say that he is definitely better than a lot of people give him credit for. I see people dunking on Cassidy all the time. I think mostly because he was just very kind of immature, and he was definitely in the first season, he was definitely the comic relief because he was kind of the Joey of the show, if you will. He was just kind of dumb at times and stuff. But that was, what made him funny too. I would say definitely his relationship with Olivia was kind of the turning point where a lot of people started respecting him. But for me, I liked him from the very start. I never got the hate for him or the criticism for him. I always really enjoyed him. The big problem was he just was never on the show for very long. Even when he came back, that was only, a couple seasons worth. So he definitely didn't have as much time to develop as much as some of the other characters here. So I can't really put him any higher than the great tier, but definitely a very solid one in my opinion. Next up, Lenny Briscoe here from the original Law & Order. I mean, if you know, man. Jerry Orbach, what a legend in his field. Absolutely phenomenal detective with pretty much anyone he worked with. My personal favorite seasons, definitely with him and Green together as the main detectives. Absolutely standouts there. And I've mentioned in previous videos that he honestly could be the best, of course, not even just in Law & Order, but for the entire Dick Wolf franchise as a whole. He's definitely a top contender for the best character of the entire franchise. So easily going to go God tier with Mr. Briscoe there. Next up here, we have Alex Cabot from SVU as well, one of the other ADAs on the show, an early ADA. I think she was definitely one of the top dogs in that respect. I'm going to go A1 tier for her. I really like Stephanie March as an actress. I always thought she did a really good job on the show. Definitely the relationships that she formed with most of the detectives, Stabler and Benson, of course, were really solid. Definitely a good standout as far as the courtroom scenes. Those are always really fun to watch. All in all, very entertaining, very solid character, deserving of the A1 tier. Next up here, we have the current ADA of the show, which is Sonny Carisi. For me, I think that he does a good job for the most part, but there are definitely certain scenes or certain episodes where I feel like they try to box him into a corner in the sense that, like, he's all business. He never seems to just enjoy himself on the show. He's always, like, really stressed out, and he's really, he's just trying to do everything that he possibly can to make sure that everyone's happy and everyone's satisfied with the case. And it just feels like he's just always overworked, to the point where he doesn't really have fun with it. And that's kind of the one thing about dramas sometimes in general, is like the characters, depending on the situations they're in, they're always like angry, they're always like mad at somebody, and you just want them to, smile and just laugh and enjoy themselves, and Carisi, he has that problem quite a bit on the show, where he's just like always super tense, that's the thing. But even outside of that, like, he definitely has some really good scenes, and his relationship with Amanda, like I said earlier, I'm not big on it at all, but I know a lot of other people that really like it. So, if that's your thing, that's cool with me. All in all, where does this land him on the tier list? I think I'm going to go great tier. Certainly a solid character to watch, but like I said, definitely a few kind of glaring issues with some of his personality there that I'm just not really big on. Following him, we got Matt Casey from Chicago Fire. Come on, this one needs no introduction. Get him out of here. Fuck that guy. Following him, the other Casey on this list, Casey Novak this time from SVU, another ADA. I'm going to put her one below Alex there. I think that she and Alex were pretty similar in that regard, but like I said earlier, I like Stephanie March a little bit more as an actress, so I'm going to put her in great tier. I think that's fair. Following him, we have Daniel Charles, Dr. Charles, usually referred to on Chicago Med there. He is the hospital psychiatrist, and he is easily my favorite character on Chicago Med. I'm going to put him in the God tier. Easily the one character that I always look forward to watching, because Med, admittedly, is not really one of my favorites when it comes to the Dick Wolf series, just because it's a medical show, and those are usually pretty hit or miss for me. But Dr. Charles always makes it a really fun time there. Always, really, really motivational when he talks to the patients and such, and always has those really great psych tips for them and stuff, and just kind of helps them out in a way that most of the other doctors, wouldn't normally do, because he's psychiatric and they're, the actual medical doctors. And so that's a really nice kind of contrast between what you normally see on the show. Just has some really great dialogue, conversations with the patients in the hospital, or even the other doctors on the show as well. He can always guide them in a certain way, which is really entertaining to watch. So all in all, definitely a God tier character there. Oliver Platt as well, fantastic actor on the show. Following him, we have Connie Rubirosa from the original Law & Order as well. She was one of the ADAs following Jack McCoy, of course. And for her, I'm going to put her in the good tier. She was solid, I think, but she didn't really stand out the way that Serena Sutherland did in the earlier seasons. They really get compared quite often because they were in the same position on the show, and I think I prefer Serena for the most part. So never disliked Connie, but she just was always just kind of there, never really stood out the way that you would want her to. Following her, we have Captain Cragen from both the original Law & Order and SVU later, one of the several characters that was on one show, then eventually transitioned to another one and became a mainstay on a second Dick Wolf show, which is very interesting. And for me, I'm going to put him in the A1 tier. Of all the captains or chiefs on the shows, he's definitely one of the best ones in my opinion. The very, very, very first episode of Law & Order, way back in 1990, reveals a pretty big secret about him that kind of goes through the rest of the series that they often bring up, and really you get to see a different side of him, which is quite interesting through that. I won't spoil it here if you want to watch it for yourself, but it's definitely very interesting to see how that affects him later in the series once you know what it is, which is quite interesting. And then on top of that, just the way that he's always sort of mentoring and talking to his squad and his employees and stuff, always really a good time there. Great dialogue as well. Dan Flack, definitely a great actress as well, actor on the show rather. So all in all, I'm going to go A1 tier with him. Definitely a thumbs up from me. Following him, we have another character from Chicago Fire here, Mr. Joseph Cruz. For me, definitely got to go A1 tier as well. I think in the more recent seasons, they have definitely sort of upped his ante a little bit as far as the emotional pull that his character has now, with his wife and they getting pregnant and such was a great storyline. In the 200th episode, we see them deliver the baby, which was fantastic to watch. That was a really good episode, in my opinion. That was a big milestone episode, and a lot of big things happened, including him and his wife having their first child, which was awesome. But even outside of that, man, they just have so many great individual plots with Cruz, where he is, just always looking out for everybody and just trying to do his best, in times where it's a little more stressful or he's got a lot on his mind and stuff. And, he's just trying to do his best, do right by everybody. Just very inspiring character, I think, overall. And the actor that plays him as well, definitely a very, very solid one within the franchise. I'm definitely going to go A1 tier with Cruz. Following him, we have yet another character from the OG Law & Order, one of the last ones to be introduced, Michael Cutter, one of the last ADAs to be on the show following McCoy there. Now, for me, I know a lot of people do like him. I think that the latest seasons of Law & Order, between 18 and 20, which was the ones that he was, the main character on, I feel like those seasons particularly just were not really up to standards as much as the earlier ones were. And I think a lot of that came down to Cutter and sort of the courtroom scenes that he had with McCoy as kind of more of a mentor than someone who would actually participate in the cases alongside him. And Cutter's like kind of presence or kind of just, aura, if you will, just always came off really creepy to me. I don't know why, but he just never like fully embedded himself in the show the way that most people wanted or most people expected him to. Because the ADA, that's a tough position to play because you have to be very, very confident and as well very sympathetic at times, depending on the case you're dealing with. And that's a hard balance to achieve. And I think Cutter just didn't really do that all that well. He just came off very defensive and very, trying to think of the words here, but just kind of arrogant at times. He just didn't really have that sympathy built into him. He just kind of came off like a creep, honestly. So for me personally, I'm gonna put him in the bad tier. I just never really was feeling him, but I know a lot of people do like him, so that's cool with me. If he's your favorite or whatever, but I don't know. I just never really dug him all that much. Next up here, we have Alex Eames, another Alex character. There's a lot of them. Alex Eames from Law & Order Criminal Intent. I do have a few characters from Criminal Intent here, and the only one I like on the entire show is I think that show is absolute fucking dog shit, is Alex Eames here. So I'll put her in the good tier. She was the only character that stayed throughout the entire series. She's kind of like the Olivia Benson in that regard. And she did do a couple crossovers with SVU and the original Law & Order and such, and those were fun to watch, but pretty much every other character that we see from Criminal Intent, rather, is going to be pretty much in either bad or bottom of the barrel, I can tell you, because that show fucking sucks, man. I don't like psychological thriller or psychological crime shows like Hannibal or Criminal Minds is kind of another one that plays into it. It kind of has that sort of side to it where they try to get in the minds of the suspects and the minds of the criminals and such, and I just didn't really care for that. It just totally abandoned the classic Law and Order formula for something that was just trying to be a little more edgy and be a little more current with, the trends that were going on in TV, and it just did not play well at all. So whenever we come across a character from one of those shows, I will let you know that I'm not a fan of Criminal Intent. If that's the one thing you take away from this video, it's that Criminal Intent fucking sucked. Following her, though, let's get back on track here. We have Ed Green, another one that I mentioned earlier I absolutely love alongside Briscoe there. Put them right next to each other up in the God tier there. Jesse L. Martin was a fantastic actor on the show. I wish that he was coming back. He's really the only other character that they could bring back for the original Law & Order, which is set to premiere tonight, actually, as I record this. But even if he doesn't, the classic seasons with him were absolutely iconic, and he was a fantastic actor, like I said, alongside Briscoe and Fontana, we'll talk about later. He had a lot of partners over the years. He was one of the longest running on the show as well, and always did a great job. The way that they sent him off was very different than I think a lot of the other characters on most Dick Wolf shows, but it was unique in that sense, and it really stood out. Definitely not a storyline that I would have expected, but one that I appreciate all the same. So all in all, definitely a God tier character in my opinion. Following him, we have another character from Chicago PD here, Erin Lindsay, played by Sophia Bush. A lot of people are going to put her very high on their respective tier lists, probably in the God tier or A1 for most people. I don't think that she's that good, honestly. I would put her probably somewhere between either great or good here, but I'll put her in at least great because I do like Sophia Bush as an actress. My big problem with her specifically is just the fact that they focused in on the Jay and Aaron storyline way too much for the show. We'll talk about Jay a little bit later, but for me, I just didn't really care about that. The relationships on PD were very hit or miss. The current ones they have, I love Kim and Adam, and don't really care all that much about Jay and Haley, but before then it was Aaron and Jay, and I don't know, man. I like Sophia Bush, as an actress. The action scenes that she did on the show were really solid, but any of the frou-frou, fluff, love type storylines there just never ever worked with her character specifically. So, definitely got to knock her down from the top, like I said, where most people would probably place her, but I'm going to say great tier for her. Next up, we have Ethan Choi from Chicago Med. He's another one of my top favorites, along with Dr. Charles there. I'm going to put him in A1 tier. The recent seasons, we've actually seen him definitely go through some really, really hard stuff. His accident at the hospital, man, that was heartbreaking. That was definitely something that was unexpected for him to go through. Almost like to the point where it was almost a little bit cruel at times, just the way that they were so heavy-handed with the drama and that storyline, but always very inspiring to see him come back stronger from that, so that was always really cool as well. But just all in all, like a really, really well-rounded, well-written character, good relationships with everybody, good chemistry with everyone on the show. Really nothing to complain about with him. I'm going to go A1 tier. Next up, my man, probably my personal favorite character from Law & Order SVU here. We got the man himself, Finn, played by Ice-T. Really no explanation needed. If you've seen the show, if you know me, Finn's God tier, absolutely 100%. Ice-T is just such a fun presence to have on the show because he just brings such a different energy to it. He's of course, outside of SVU, known for being a rapper and such, and that energy is really, really interesting to see how that contrasts with him playing a officer on police procedural, and it works out fantastic in my opinion. Always been a huge fan of Ice-T, either his acting or his music, and so this is just a perfect fit for him, I think. Definitely God tier, no question. Next up here, another one of my boys, we have Blake Gallo here from Chicago Fire. Blake, hella underrated, man. Gallo, probably the most underrated character on Chicago Fire, in my opinion. I'm going to go A1 tier. I don't know why people dunk on him so much, man. He is just a trooper on the show. He's always going through tough times, and you always want to see him just get better and stronger and such. And I don't really want to give too much away if you're not caught up, but they do him really dirty in one of the recent episodes, man. They do him so dirty. I was really, really mad at the show because I've been rooting for Gallo for so long to get with another character, and man, the way that they just completely ignored him was just absolutely just visceral, But outside of that, gotta go A1 tier, man. Just an absolute badass in my opinion. Next up here, Sharon Goodwin from Chicago Med here, played by the same actress who played Anita Van Buren, the lieutenant from the original Law & Order there. For me, I would say that she's pretty solid overall. I'm going to put her in the great tier. I think that the only big kind of, criticism I have with her is she just doesn't really do much in the show. She's just kind of there for legacy purposes, and she's the director of the hospital, so she's not really on the front lines, taking care of the patients all that much, but still pretty entertaining all in all. Solid writing for her. Nothing really huge to complain about, but just, she's not really on the show as often. Just doesn't get a lot of screen time is all. So it's hard to kind of compare her to some of the other characters there, but all in all, still a pretty solid one in my book. Great tier is where she's going to go. All right, remember what I said earlier about Criminal Intent? Well, we have another guy here from Criminal Intent, Robert Gorin. Fuck Criminal Intent. Just get it out of here. Fuck that guy. Next up here is Haley Upton from Chicago PD. Oh boy, if the Twitter stans are watching this, cover your ears, because I don't think she is the second coming of Jesus Christ like all of y'all do. For me, Haley is fine. I don't really have anything against her necessarily, but the way that the fucking fan base just absolutely just trumps her up so freaking much is ridiculous. She definitely does not get that sort of attention in any other circle. in the Law and Order community, except for on PD specifically with the fucking Twitter stands and such. And I know this is like really off topic, but just the fact that they are so complicit in bringing the whole PD fan base down within the circle, because people don't respect PD because of the fans, man. It's a pretty toxic fan base, you know, and it sucks because it's one of the best shows in the entire Dick Wolf franchise there. But the stands and stuff, they just pull the whole fandom down. Can't even have civil conversations anymore in it, I swear. Because people, if you dunk on either Haley or Jay now, they will fucking kick your ass, you know? So, hopefully they don't find this video, because I'm not the biggest fan of Haley, I gotta be honest. The episode that premiered yesterday, season 9, 13, named Stillwater, was hugely, promoted and marketed in pretty much every corner of the Dick Wolf fandom, and it was just like, it was Chicago PD's big return after the Olympics, after the big hiatus they had. Haley-led episode, and I heard from multiple sources working on the show that it was not only the best episode of the season, but one of, if not the best episodes that they had ever made for the entire series. So that already gave some huge expectations, and that's, always a red flag, because that usually is a sign that it's never going to hit those high marks that everyone puts it to. I heard multiple of the casts thought that way, including Tracy Spiridakos, who plays Haley, and as well some of the writing staff as well were mentioning online how it was such a great episode. And I gotta tell you, man, after watching it myself, it definitely didn't live up to the hype. I guess I'm not that surprised, because the way that everyone was talking about it, I didn't think it would personally, but you never know. You always want to give things a shot. I was waiting for it to be a 10 out of 10, 100%, like no criticisms whatsoever sort of episode, and it was far from that. Haley just felt so stilted on the show. The performance was just not very good. I want to defend her, I really do, but there's too many things right now going on with her character in relation to everything else that the show provides, that it's just hard to give her the proper justification that I think she deserves, because people are just going to act, crazy over it, regardless of what you say. So for me, I'm going to put her in the good tier. I'm just going to put her right in the middle there, not even think about it, not even worry about it, honestly. Because yes, there are some good aspects to her character, sure, but man, the way that people talk about her, I don't even know. It's just a totally different beast than every other character in the Dick Wolf franchise. So there, I'll leave it at that. I'll get off my soapbox now. Let's continue on with the rest of the characters here, and let's talk about Jay and Will Halstead, the Halstead brothers here. Jay from PD and Will from Chicago Med there. So Jay as well, like I just mentioned, him and Haley in their relationship now, and he's another one that like people absolutely love on the show. I think that he's just very bland. I think that he's just very, very mediocre. He is just not a very interesting character to watch. I'm going to put him in the meh tier. The biggest issue with Jay is in the 9 seasons that PD has been on, he doesn't have any remarkable storylines or really standout, personal, qualities about him. You can't really describe him in a way which is unique to just him the way that you can with pretty much any other character on the show. You should be able to do that after 9 seasons, and there are characters that have only been on for a smaller amount of time, either they were on earlier or they were on later, that have a fraction of his screen time that you can do that tenfold with. You could describe anything about them and it would be very, very true to that one person. But with Jay, there's just nothing, unique that really, stands out about him. That's really the best way I can describe it. So for me, I'm going to put him in the meh tier. There's just nothing there that hooks me into his character or his, personality all that much. And then with Will, on the other hand, this is how you do a character really well. Will is fantastic. He's going in the A1 tier. He has some great storylines along with Natalie and Crockett, of course, who we'll talk about a little bit later. And then his current sort of storyline, the Will They, Won't They with Stevie Hammer, is excellent, who is up next, actually. And then on top of all that, the storyline with him and Sharon was really, really interesting, where he was trying to kind of infiltrate one of the other doctors for just bleeding money from the hospital. That was a really interesting sort of storyline and plot that they had him go through. That was a little bit more, mystery type for the show that was never really executed beforehand. So that was really cool. But yeah, he gets thrown into a lot of really interesting plots and is always executed really well. I like the actor on the show. Just really, really solid overall. Like, there's really nothing, again, to criticize him for all that much. A1 tier. Definitely going to go with that. I just mentioned her, but next up is Stevie Hammer. The current sort of will they, won't they with Will on Med, and then the just kind of the fact that she is very new on the show. She's only been in for the last season or so, season and a half or so, which is, fine. But again, we don't really have a lot of development on her character all that much yet. So hard to put her any higher than like the good tier. So I think that's where she's going to go. I do like the relationship we have with her and her mom together, because they have a very, very tense relationship together. And that's pretty interesting to watch overall. I think the episode that's supposed to premiere next week is going to kind of go deeper into that, and we're going to kind of see some of their backstory together, which should be pretty interesting. But for now, I think good tier is justified just because she's so new on the show. So just like some of the other characters I mentioned earlier, we just don't have that much development on her yet. Following her, we have the big dog here, probably the one that most everybody, even if you're not connected in with Dick Wolf, will recognize and or will have an opinion on, Hank Voight from Chicago PD. This is a love it or you hate it character. There is no in between. I've never seen people say that he's just good or he's just okay. He is either the top dog on your ranking or the absolute bottom of the barrel. And for me, absolutely tremendous character. Absolutely no question going in God tier here. Hank is absolutely crazy, but like I said earlier, if you love the crime drama and the anti-hero storylines, my vote for the greatest anti-hero in TV history is Sergeant Hank Voight right there. No question about it. You can have your Tony Sopranos, you can have your Jax Tellers, you can have your Walter Whites. I'm taking Hank any day of the week, man. The things that this man jumps through, the hoops that this man jumps through to get where he needs to go, even if it's just for himself, are just mind-blowing to watch. And sometimes you root against him and sometimes you root for him. That is the purpose of an anti-hero. You're never sure what side you're supposed to fall on when it comes to these guys. But no matter what it is, no matter who he's going up against or who he's going to bat for, he is super entertaining all the way through there. Jason Bay, terrific actor as well. God tier without question. Next up here, we have Christopher Herman from Chicago Fire, another one that we have to go at God tier for. Easily the funniest character, probably in the entire franchise here, always making me laugh. Has that thick Chicago accent, he talks like this a lot, and he runs a bar and he mollies, Yeah, he always does that. But he's super entertaining to watch. He's super, super fun. Always hanging out with Mouch, of course, another great character from the show. But there was one episode in particular from last season, the bottle episode they did with him and Cruz, that just absolutely blew me away. Almost, I'm gonna admit it right here, almost made me cry. Super emotional, man. He was really fighting for himself in that one. That was a great episode. He's got 5 kids, I believe it is, as well, which is a recurring segment. So like when Joe and his wife were expecting his first child, like I talked about earlier, he was always there to sort of mentor them and coach him and, make sure that they were doing well, because he has so much experience in that. So that's always really, really fun to see how he's just, looking out after other people, just super compassionate as well. All around, checks all those boxes, definitely a God tier character. Following him, we have George Wong, another psychiatry doctor, this time from Law & Order SVU. He was on the show for a pretty solid amount of time in the earlier seasons, but he always felt like a background character. He always felt like a secondary character, even though he was credited as being part of the main cast there. I did enjoy him for what he was there to do. I do like the psychiatry aspects and the psychological aspects sometimes for these shows. But at least for me, like I said, he just didn't really have that strong of a presence compared to most characters. So another one that's going to fall into the good tier for that we just don't really get a lot of other development outside of, just what he's there to do, which is a little disappointing at times. Would have been nice to see him maybe have a steady relationship on the show or something like that we could follow, but we just never really got any of that with him. So all in all, it's just going to balance out at the good tier. Next up here, another one from Organized Crime, relatively recent show, is going to be Jet here. She is the sort of, tech person for their unit there. Always working on the computer and always like kind of hacking into things and security cameras or, if they have to get any information through their social media or something, she's always on, that sort of stuff. And she's super entertaining, man. Always has that sort of smug, arrogance to her, but in a good way, just always kind of cocky and kind of mocking the other detectives there, but in a super entertaining way as well. Even though she is relatively new, I'm going to put her a little bit higher than Sergeant Bell, just because I like her personality a little bit more, but still can't put her too high yet because, again, we don't really have a ton of development on her all that yet. It's only in its second season after all, so just give it a little more time and we'll definitely see where that goes with sort of the relationships and such. But all in all, definitely a very, very great character in my opinion. Next up, Joe Fontana here from the original Law & Order as well here. Worked closely with Green for a few seasons there. He was, I think, not the initial replacement, one of the initial replacements for Lenny Briscoe after Jerry Orbach died, and they had to write out his character, so they brought in a couple other actors for the secondary roles, and he was one of them early on there. And I never liked him as much as Briscoe, of course, but he had some solid parts and solid episodes with Ed as well. I'm going to put him in, he's another one that kind of toes the line here between great and good, but I think I'll put him in the great tier. Definitely had some comic relief as well. That was always fun to watch, but all in all, a solid enough character, not the most memorable in my opinion, but, certainly a decent one at that. Next up here from FBI, our first character from that series, we have Jubal Valentine, who in addition having the coolest name in TV history, is also one of the top dogs when it comes to Dick Wolf characters. Another one that's got to go in the God tier. If you saw my actor tier list, you know that I absolutely love Jeremy Sisto here. I think he's an all-around fantastic actor, and he's done, of course, many, many Dick Wolf projects, including FBI here as Jubal. Just a really, really fun character to watch, kind of the head of everything that goes on in the series. Just always looking out after everybody, has some really solid personal relationships with some of the other characters on the show, and not like relationships, but friendships, and has great chemistry with a lot of the people, a lot of the actors on the show as well. They're just all around really, really solid, well-rounded character that I really have nothing to complain about here. Definitely got to go God tier with him. On the total opposite end of the spectrum, though, we have who's probably the worst character that SVU has ever seen. We have Kat Tamine here. A lot of people, including myself, absolutely cannot stand her. And it kind of got to the point where it was almost like you exaggerated your hatred for her because of that's just what the fans wanted and stuff, and it was kind of like an in-joke in the fandom to just like rip on her as hard as you possibly could. I don't think she deserved all that necessarily, but yeah, I too was just not a fan of her whatsoever. I was glad that she was only on for a couple seasons because it just wasn't working. I think the writers kind of realized pretty quickly that they just kind of she just wasn't really fitting in with a lot of the other detectives. They tried to pair her with Finn at times, which was just a total mess. Those two just clashed. You know, they just did not have any chemistry whatsoever. We talked about Finn earlier, who's probably my favorite character on the show. Bringing him in with someone with like no distinctive personality and just no charisma whatsoever, just did not work at all. So for me, Kat, unfortunately, got to go bottom of the barrel with her. Just an absolute mess of a character. Following her, we have the two Kevins. We have Kevin Atwater from from PD rather, and we have Kevin Bernard from the original Law and Order, someone who is in fact coming back to the show when it premieres tonight. Oh man, I'm so hyped for that. It's gonna be a great return for him. But let's start with Atwater here, and for me, I think that he is probably the most frustrating character on this entire list because in the earlier seasons, he would have been God tier, no question about it. When he was Patrol with Kim, that was fantastic, right? That was like the best peak that his character ever saw. But as it stands now, the recent seasons with him, the writers do not know how to utilize him at all, man. They are just completely lost when it comes to his development and any interesting plot that they can give him. Any episode that features him as like the lead, if it's a Kevin-driven episode, it usually has a way lower score than most of the other ones on places like IMDb and fan sites like that. And I can see why, because they just don't really utilize him in a creative way anymore like they used to, or like they can with the other characters. And he doesn't get a lot of them either. He'll maybe only get like 2 to 4 per season, which is just not enough. It's just not enough to really develop his character any further than he should. I will say I do like the recent seasons. There were a couple plots that I thought were pretty solid. Him and Celeste, I thought that was a pretty solid relationship that he was part of, but it just didn't last very long. They just never really sustain any of his storylines or any of his relationships the way that they do with some of the other characters. And so it just kind of comes off like they just don't really know what to use him for all that much. He just comes off more like a secondary character, which is really disappointing because I think the actor LaRoyce Hawkins is fantastic, but they just don't use him. They just do not use him whatsoever. So for that, I'm going to have to put him in the good tier to kind of balance out again. His earlier reign with Patrol was phenomenal. Definitely would have put him much higher, but the current seasons definitely are kind of dragging him down. And that's a shame because I think he is a very, very fun character to watch. But like I said, they just don't use him in any creative manner anymore, which is just such a shame. Kevin Bernard, on the other hand, was always a lot of fun, played by Anthony Anderson here, so you know that he has the comic relief, of course, in place. He's going to go in A1 tier. He was originally introduced as an IAB officer, which is kind of their internal investigation sort of avenue. If a cop does something out of line, they have to go to IAB, and he is one of the detectives in that unit for a little while, and then he's eventually introduced to be Cyrus's new partner on the show, and then that's how he becomes a main Law and Order detective, and he runs out the rest of the series like that. And him and Lupo always had some great chemistry together. Another Jeremy Sisto character we'll talk about in just a second here, always had great energy with of course Anthony Anderson there, the two actors working really well together, which was a lot of fun. And like I mentioned earlier, he is indeed coming back to the show when it premieres tonight, which will be super exciting. Jeffrey Donovan is going to play the other lead actor, or the lead detective on the show now. So it'll be Anthony Anderson and Jeffrey Donovan, which will be really fun to see, like both of them quite a bit here. But yeah, Bernard, absolutely fantastic A1 character in my opinion. Next up here, Kim Burgess. If you know, you know, my friends. I talk about her all the time. Her and Adam, of course, absolutely wonderful together. God tier, probably my favorite on PD. So in contention with my favorite all in all for the entire franchise as well. Just absolutely astounding. Next up is Cyrus Lupo. As I just mentioned, he had great chemistry with Kevin Bernard on the show. Jeremy Sisto, again, great actor. The only criticism I have really is the way that they initially introduced him. He kind of came off a little sloppy at times, a little, he wasn't really put together. He just kind of came off like he was a little bit more, clumsy in that kind of regard, like with his appearance and stuff like that. But once he kind of tidied that up and he really got going in the show, he instantly became one of my favorites. So he's another one that's got to go in the God tier there. Following him, next up is Crockett Marcel, Dr. Marcel, another one from Med here. He had a pretty decent relationship with Natalie for a little while, but I think that storyline just got played out, honestly. I just never really bought into the idea that they were meant for each other, as cheesy as that sounds. I always preferred her with Will, to be honest with you. But Crockett, he does have a couple decent plots now. He's just a pretty stand-up guy when it comes to the actual, hospital type stuff. If he has to be, in surgery or something, he's always gunning for that. He's always willing to jump in and help where he's needed. But I think personality is where his character just lacks a little bit. Just isn't as interesting as a person as some of the other characters on Med. So I think for that, he's going to balance out. He's going to go in the good tier as well. Boy, oh boy, do we have a full lineup there. That is crazy to look at. So we have about maybe a third of the characters left here. So for this last third, we're going to run pretty quickly here because we're coming up on just about an hour here. So let's run through these the last third of these characters pretty swiftly, starting with the two Maggies here. We have Maggie Bell and Maggie Lockwood. Bell from FBI and Lockwood from Chicago Med there. And for me, Belle is fine, but she has like no distinctive character or personality either. I'm going to go with the Med here. I think the only thing that I really, that stands out about her is the relationship she has with her sister. That's pretty much it. I mean, her and OA have good chemistry. They're the two lead detectives on the show, but really outside of that, there's just nothing that really hooks me in, kind of like what I was saying about Jay earlier. Just kind of has that problem as the lead who is the most plain, the most adaptable, the most straight, just straight shooter there, to kind of be a bit of a foil for everyone else around them, to make the other characters stand out. So that's what, I think her kind of role within the context of the cast is, but as a result of this list, it just definitely will bring her down because it's just not very fun to watch, And then for Maggie Lockwood for Chicago Med there, like I said, I always thought that she was pretty solid. I really like her and Vanessa together. If you know, you know. And then, of course, she just has really, really good chemistry with all the other characters there. I'm going to go in the great tier for her. Nothing that really, is like amazing that would put her in any higher than that, but always just very reliable, very, very solid, reliable character on the show. Next up, we have Jack McCoy here, one of the most famous ADAs of all the Law and Orders there. Definitely going to put him high up in the God tier. He is the other legacy character that's coming back to the show for this revival alongside Bernard, which is going to be super exciting. Sam Waterston, absolutely top tier actor as well there for his performance. Definitely a God tier status character. Following him, we have Mike Logan. He was the OG Law and Order detective. He was the very first one way back in the 90s there, played by Chris Noth, who's a very, very talented actor as well. I'm going to go great tier with him. I do like the very, very early seasons of Law and Order as well. Definitely not as polished as some of the later ones would be, but, Mike Logan was a very entertaining character all the same. Had good chemistry with Captain Cragen, of course, because he was there from the beginning as well. Very, very entertaining to watch those two work together. So, all in all, great character. Next up is Mouch here. Mouch is the other comic relief of Fire alongside Herman there. So we got to put him in the same place as Herman. He's definitely improved, I think, in the show since he was introduced way back in the day. He's another one that's been there from day one. And from the very first episode, you kind of get the sense that he is a little bit less confident than everybody. He's a little more insecure. Doesn't really feel like he belongs with the rest of the cast. He's just not as, passionate about being a firefighter and such, and just that lack of confidence, is really getting to him early on. But then once he really kicks it in and he has a few really good, calls with the rest of the gang, and he really starts to find his place in the group, then he just absolutely explodes as just a fan favorite, and then that's continued ever since, from the earlier seasons into now, where he is easily the funniest character alongside Herman, like I said, and definitely has some great emotional scenes as well with all of the stunts and the fire sort of rescues that he does, as well. Super entertaining to watch. Following him, we have John Munch there from Law & Order SVU, another one of the comic relief characters that almost everyone loves there. Earlier in the series, he's partnered up with Finn, which is great because those two absolutely work wonders together. And then later on, he is kind of, floating between partners. He does some with Olivia. He does some with Nick Amaro eventually. The way that they ended his run, though, I will say, because this is pretty infamous in the sort of SVU community, is the actor Richard Belzer. They started writing his parts less and less because the initial plan was they just wanted to kind of end his character. They wanted him off the show. And Belzer was not happy about that. He was never contacted about that. He never got any warning about it, and they just kind of slowly but surely wrote him off the show in smaller parts per episode. And by the time he left, his Belzer's relationship with the show really started to wane because they just never really gave him the proper respect that he deserves, and there's never really an explanation as to why that was. They just kind of felt like his character was done, but they never really gave him a reason why, so I always thought that was kind of douchey of the show, but that doesn't reflect his character. That's more on the producers and such for just not really doing their jobs, more or less. But in any case, he was still a super entertaining character, and I absolutely love Richard Belzer as an actor as well, so definitely got to go God tier with him. Following him, we have Natalie here as well from Chicago Med, and like I said earlier, she worked well with Crockett and Will. There was sort of that love triangle angle between the three of them. I always preferred her with Will, but in any case, she was pretty entertaining all around. I'm going to put her in the great tier. She as well had a relationship with her mom that was tested in the show. She would do some kind of devious things, and that was, you didn't exactly approve of what she was doing for her mom, but you understood why she was doing it, just to protect her and such. So there was a little bit of that sort of, emotional sort of aspect to it, if you will. But yeah, Natalie was a lot of fun, and when she left the show, it was all on good terms and stuff, but I do think that she is missed in the fandom. I know a lot of people that would like her back. I like Stevie Hammer just as much as we talked about earlier, but I think Natalie is a really, really solid character as well. Following her, we have Zach Nichols, played by Jeff Goldblum, of all people, once again from Criminal Intent, and you know what that means. We got to go in the infamous bottom of the barrel tier, Deep Purple. Fucking Criminal Intent. Next up is Nina Cassidy from the original Law & Order. Probably the most underrated character from the OG series there, because she was only on for one season where she was partnered with Green on the show, and I love that season. I absolutely love her character. I think that she was fantastic. It was great to have a female detective as well alongside a male one, because usually you just got the male detectives and then the female ADAs on the show, but that was a great balance between them. Had great chemistry, just super entertaining. Some of my personal favorite episodes of the series fall in that season where she was the lead character for, so that just makes sense to me, that I would enjoy her so much. But yeah, I'm going to give her A1, man. Just super, super overlooked. I don't know why people just often ignore her season or forget about her, but she was great. Next up is OA from FBI here. As I mentioned earlier, him and Maggie are the two leads on the original FBI there, and I think I like him a little bit more than Maggie in that regard. I'm going to put him in great tier. In the first episode of International as well, which just premiered this year, they do a crossover, and he is one of the guest stars on that, and you really get to see a little bit more kind of how he acts outside of just him and Maggie, which is really cool. And I really like his personality on the show. He's very, upfront, and he's very, direct with whatever he's trying to get to you. If he has to tell you something important, he's not going to bullshit around. He's in it, taking it seriously and stuff, which is always great to see. Just all in all, really, really solid character. Really, really enjoy him. Next up, an absolute legend of all Dick Wolf shows, probably next to Hank, like I said earlier, is probably the most recognizable character, even outside of just the direct community there. We have Miss Olivia Benson, played by Mariska Hargitay. I'm going to have to put her in God tier as well. I mean, even if I didn't enjoy her as much as I do, I still put her in God tier because she is just an absolute legend, right? The longest running character in TV history, right? Just full out the only character from the show that's been there for every single season as a lead from day one up until day 500 and whatever they're on at this point. Next to Finn, she is the highest or the longest running. Finn is the second longest running, but he's not even in the first season. He has a guest star appearance in the season 1 finale, and then he starts as a lead in season 2. So, like I said, Olivia is the only character that's been on for the entire run of the show. So that alone easily puts her in God tier. But outside of that, man, Mariska Hargitay, fantastic actress, super compassionate, super, just willing to do anything that it takes to protect her family or protect, the rest of her unit and stuff. She's now a captain on the show, and that's a great role for her because she's very, professional in that regard, always, looking out after everybody. Just a super stand-up, character on the show. Really, again, nothing to criticize her for. Gotta go God tier there. All right, speaking of criticism, my next character here is yet another person that is going into the infamous Deep Purple bottom of the barrel. This is Jason Pelham from Chicago Fire. Absolutely fuck this dude. I cannot stand this guy. The fact that the fan base and the other characters on the show go to bat for him as much as they do is absolutely ridiculous because this guy is an absolute tool bag. I cannot stand him for the life of me. The very first call that he's on as the guest lieutenant for the firehouse that they work in, he's absolutely fucking everything up. He's being a dick. He's not listening to orders properly. There's no positive traits that I can put on this character. He's just an arrogant asshole the whole time. And in the very first couple episodes that he's introduced in the show, he is super, super mean, specifically to Gallo, and that's just not going to fly with me, because y'all know Gallo's fucking awesome. We love Gallo in this house, so yeah, that ain't right. That's not cool that he dunks on him so much. So yeah, for me, absolutely thumbs down, bottom of the barrel. Fuck this dude. Get the fuck out of here, man. Absolute asshole. Next up here is Ray Curtis, played by Benjamin Bratt from the original Law & Order. He's another one that I just don't really care for all that much. I'm going to put him in the Matt tier. A lot of people really, really like him. My mom, actually, a big Law & Order fan, really liked his season specifically, but I don't know. He just never really stood out to me. I like Benjamin Bratt as an actor on Modern Family, of course, as Javier. That's a great role for him. And he tries to bring some of that personality into the show where he's a little bit smug, a little bit arrogant. He's trying to do that pretty boy, sort of thing. And it just doesn't fit in the, role that he's trying to be a detective and you're trying to be serious with him. He's always just kind of flirting with everybody. It doesn't make a good, a protagonist for a police procedural. So that's my big, sort of criticism with him. But all in all, going to go Matt tier for him. Next up here, we have Ritter as well from Chicago Fire. He's another one that gets paired with Gallo quite a bit, and as a result, I'm going to put him in the same tier. I'm going to go A1. The fact, I will say, so this isn't really a criticism of him as a character, but it's more on the show. He is the token gay character, and he's the token black character. That is kind of what they use him for. because he doesn't really get a lot of intricate storylines for himself, because he is just kind of there to be like, we have a character that is indeed gay and we have a character that is indeed black. I mean, Dick Wolf has always been pretty progressive in that regard. Like, there's always been a well-diversed, well-casted, group of people for these roles. I mean, just looking at this tier list, there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of variety, of course. But, yeah, Ritter, that is like his one kind of token personality, which is kind of shitty for the show. They have expanded on that quite a bit since then, but when he was first introduced, that was pretty much his whole, personality trait. But him and Gallo and Violet always have some really interesting storylines together. They do have some of that like comic relief type, energy to them, but they don't always make you laugh. They just make you smile, they just make you feel good, fun to watch what they're doing. I like the microbrewery storyline that they've been building up. I think that's a lot of fun. Even if it has like nothing to do with the show in question, it's just a lot of fun to watch. So all in all, I'm gonna go A1 tier with Ritter there. Next up here, ADA Ron Carver. Guess who? Guess what show he's from? I'm gonna put him in a tier, and you're gonna guess what show he's from. Can you guess it? Yeah. Even the ADAs on Criminal Intent, just get him out of here. Fuck that guy. Next up here, we have Dr. Dylan Scott from Chicago Med. Dylan is probably the only of the new characters, like between him and Dr. Hammer and such, that just hasn't really gotten the proper development yet. I'm going to put him in the Med tier. I do like sort of the plot with him and his dad, I think, is okay, but really outside of that, there's again nothing that's really distinctive or really unique about him, that most of the other characters don't do either adequately or better than he is providing. So there's not really a lot of use for him, though. One thing that is very interesting about Dr. Scott, though, is one of the first episodes that he's introduced on. It's revealed that Loris Hawkins, the actor that plays Kevin on the show, he was a guest star in one of the episodes of Med a little while ago, and it's revealed that they knew each other. Dylan Scott and Kevin Atwater knew each other within the context of the show, so keeping that continuity alive is quite interesting as well. So that could make for an interesting crossover maybe later in the series if they wanted to expand on that a little bit. But, for now, he's just kind of there. He doesn't do anything objectively awful or objectively amazing. He's just kind of there. So, all right, we have the last little bit of characters here, so I'm just going to rattle through these so we can wrap up this video, because this has been quite an adventure here. Starting with Sean Roman here. Sean got in the way of Adam and Kim, so yeah, not very entertaining. I do like the actor Brian Grafferty is pretty good, but yeah, I just never cared for the character all that much. Next up is Kelly Severide here. Shame on the show for not really expanding on him as much as they should with the Stella and his storylines, but he's great on the show, A1 tier. He really has, I think, the best change from where he comes from. Like at the very beginning of the show, he's an absolute mess. He's a druggie. He's just a total junkie. He's just, his love life is in pieces. Like, he's a total wreck. And then they completely do a 180 on him, and he makes for a fantastic, standout character now, with Stella, of course, as the relationship. Actually, I'm going to grab Stella here while we're talking about them and put them together, because she as well has a great transformational, kind of like Mouch, like I said earlier, where she comes in a little less confident, and she doesn't really know if she's up for the task of being a firefighter. And then once she starts putting all the pieces together and really finds her niche in the group, then it really just, blossoms for her, which is great. And then, of course, the relationship on the show, like I've mentioned already, is also fantastic there. So A1 for both Severide and Stella. Next up is Serena Sutherland here, another ADA from the original Law & Order. I'm going to put her in A1 as well. I really, really liked the progressiveness of her character. She was one of the first gay characters in any Dick Wolf show, and there were a lot of storylines revolving around the fact that she was defending gay clients or people that were involved in a case that involved, some element of them being gay or homosexuality in some way. And that was very progressive, sort of topic that they were tackling very early on in the show, and that continued with Serena Sutherland's reign on the series as well. So that all gonna give her a 1 tier. Next up, Stabler, of course. If you know, my friends. Stabler definitely gonna go in the A1 tier, or excuse me, in the God tier rather. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I mean, even when he was on SVU, he was great. Christopher Maloney, fantastic actor, but now in Organized Crime, dude, that is probably the best just like role that they could have put him in. Being undercover, being in like a smaller but more concretely defined sort of role for him is excellent, man. That show is fantastic. Absolutely love him on there. Of course, his relationship with all of his kids and his family is great. We're definitely seeing that a lot more in Organized Crime, where he's there's some family scenes where they're just all kind of together, and he's just always looking out for them, and that's always great to see. But yeah, all in all, a God tier character, another one. Really can't hate on him just because of his legacy within the Dick Wolf sphere. Next up is Trudy Platt here, one of the sergeants in PD. A lot of people really, really like her. I don't, frankly. She's fine. Now, I shouldn't say that I don't hate her or anything, but I just feel like a lot of the times where she gets brought up in the community or in the fandom, it's really just for the stupidest things, like her relationship with Herman and stuff, like her friendship with Herman on PD and Fire. That's just weird, because that happens so rarely, I mean, it's cool to see, the crossovers and whatnot, but it's in the context of her own show, no, that doesn't happen. So I don't know, it's just kind of dumb. In the early seasons, in the early episodes, she is kind of a bitch to Kim, I will say. So again, we don't take that. We don't take that kind of harassment around here. So all in all, she's not the worst character ever, but I'm going to put her in the meh tier. I think she does get a little bit too much love in the fandom at times for just reasons that aren't really justified. Next up is Violet here. Now, I got to be honest, man. I liked Violet early on, but some of the recent stuff that she's been doing, I don't approve, man. Don't really like her and Hawkins together. Hawkins is a character that is just... He's not really big enough to qualify for this list, but he might soon. He might become a main character, we'll see. But yeah, their relationship, don't really like it. She's the character that I've been rooting for her and Gallo to get together, like I said earlier, but that hasn't happened, and they decided to go another route with that story. So again, that doesn't really reflect her as a character all that much. It's more about the writing and stuff, but it's just kind of unfortunate because I really like them together. Like I said earlier, her and Gallo and Ritter have some great, friendship storylines. They all have great chemistry, but I just don't like the direction that they're taking her character right now, and it's really dragging her down from the rest of the pack. So I'm going to go meh tier for her. Next up is Melinda Warner here, the MA or the ME from SVU, and for her, I'm going to put her in the great tier. Very solid. Nothing that was insane, that really pushed her over the edge, but very reliable, very standout in that respect. I like her more than forget the name, the one from Law and Order, the original. I do like Emmy Warner more, but all in all, just a really solid, reliable character, like I said. Next up here is Richard Wheatley from Organized Crime, played by Dylan McDermott. This guy is absolutely crazy. I'm going to put him in the God tier here. He's the only Organized Crime character, I think, that has gotten enough development, because he's been the central villain of the show, the central sort of, bad guy from the start of the series up until now. And the way that they just portray him on the show is just absolutely ridiculous. The lengths that he goes to just get whatever he needs done. If he needs someone taken out, if he needs, if he's trying to get money from someone. You know, just the lengths that he goes to do it is absolutely insane. One of the biggest plots they did early on, which is fucking hilarious, is he fucking robs a truck that has COVID-19 vaccines so that he can resell them and redistribute them to people and mark up the price for it. Absolutely insanely twisted, despicable shit that only someone like Wheatley could come up with. And Dylan McDermott to play him is absolutely phenomenal, because Dylan McDermott is great at playing villains and just real sinister characters like this. And him and Stabler have some of the best scenes of recent TV that I've seen, like all throughout 2021 when Organized Crime premiered. Like, some of my favorite personal moments from all of TV came in the scenes with Wheatley and Stabler together. It is just phenomenal stuff. So yeah, absolutely going to be God tier there. Our last two here we'll do real quick. Anita Van Buren from the OG Law & Order. I always liked her as lieutenant. Nothing that was, again, really, really stand out for her, but very reliable, very solid enough character. And then Vanessa from Med. I'm going to put her in the Med tier. I think that her introduction was very unique and very interesting alongside who she was in relation to Maggie, which I won't spoil here, but that was pretty shocking. But I just feel like she is kind of another Kevin Atwater example where she just gets underutilized now. Early on, they had a lot of plots surrounding her and, you know, who she was and how she fit into the hospital workplace, but a lot of that slowed down now, and now she's just kind of a secondary character, so we just don't really have a lot of that development either for now. But that is it, my friends, with the Dick Wolf tier list there, the characters, of course. I would recap them the way Mike does, but we have a lot to go through, so I'll just let you view it over. I know this one was a long one, but I appreciate you guys sticking with me here. 75-ish Dick Wolf characters there. Like I said, this could have been 10 times the amount given all of his shows and stuff. So this was just a very, very, very scaled down, small look over it, and it was still well over an hour. So anyways, I appreciate you guys sticking with me. If you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe, of course, would be much appreciated here. And with that, we will see you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.